voices of the Sun Belt. It's JT Crabtree from the South Alabama Jaguars on Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down and the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Don't forget about those Summer Olympics. All right, we're going to try a new feature here. We're going to try and get all of the radio broadcasters for all of the Sun Belt football teams. And we're going to start with my buddy JT Crabtree from South Alabama, talking about Major Applewhite and Kane Wck. He talks about Gio Lopez, the running backs, the wide receivers, and a lot of holes to fill on the defense. Let's get to it. He is the voice of the South Alabama Jaguars. He's JT Crabtree on Locked On Sun Belt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Dave Schultz with you, and we're bringing in my buddy, the voice of the South Alabama Jaguars, JT Crabtree. We're going to try and get all the radio voices and see how much smoke they can pump about their teams heading into the 2024 season. And no better smoke pumper than JT Crabtree. JT, how you doing, man? How was the summer?
It's good, man. Good to see you. I am, without a doubt, the number one sunshine pumper of all things red, white, and blue Jags. So you got it.
That's right. All right. So, I wish I should write this down when I want to talk about it, but one domino, some guy named Nick Saban retiring and about 6 different head coaches changed his jobs. I tweeted it out. I joked about it. I tweeted it at our buddy Craig Stevenson. Does the defensive coordinator is it easier to get a Power 5 job as the defensive coordinator from Alabama or the head coach of South Alabama? And Kane Wck answered that question. He moved on to Alabama to become the DC, I guess co-DC as the case may be. We're both around Major Applewhite for a few years. He has, been there. He's heading into his 4th season now. First as the head coach, what would you say are the major differences between Major Applewhite and Kane Wck?
A lot of it is still the same, obviously, from Major being there the last 3 years as OC. But, you look at some of the things, where Kane was very, very outgoing and would get in the community and do things like that. Major's good at that too, but he's primarily a football guy. He wants to get in the film room and break down cover 2 and cover 3 as long as he can. He's a more straightforward football coach than the previous regime. Not that's a bad thing. It's just a different way that they operate. And so I think that's a little bit different. Seeing him last a couple of weeks ago in Media Day in New Orleans, we got to be around him a little more socially with Major, and he's more outgoing than he initially shows on the outside sometimes, which was fun. You wonder oftentimes too when he's an offensive coordinator for 3 years and he's got to deal with everybody on the roster now. And Wykevius Thomas, our all-conference defensive tackle, was with us, and they didn't skip a beat. The 2 of them were hitting it off. They were great. And so that's an interesting dynamic to see as well. So overall, I don't think a ton has changed. There was still a lot of continuity. You look at the staff, and yes, they had made some changes after the bowl game when Kane was still there. But a lot of the hires that they had made were actually already done before Kane left and before Major was named the head coach. And so a lot of those guys were people that Major was wanting on his staff anyway. And so there's already a lot of continuity there. Defensively, obviously, some big changes with Corey Batoon going to Missouri and then bringing Will Wyndham back within a 3-week span after he left to take a job at Arkansas State. Bringing him back as defensive coordinator, there's not a lot of difference there either. And so there's still a sense of familiarity with the terminology and just kind of the day-to-day operations a little bit. But just I think the way that Major operates versus the way Kane operated, yes, it's different, but it's still going to be fine. And I think that's what's kind of, for us on the administrative side, is interesting to kind of get a feel for is how does he like to do weekly pressers? How does he like to do post-game press? How does he want to do his coach's show? Things like that. And so there's some infrastructure things still getting used to, still figuring it out. But for the most part, he's been great to work with so far.
Yeah, and big difference is the way they grew up, right? One was the coach's son, kind of blue-collar workman-like. The other one was a big-time prospect, maybe underachieved a little bit, has always had stardom kind of placed on him, and, maybe has come up short. This is his second time becoming a head coach. I think you would agree with me. Oh, and by the way, don't be surprised to hear from Craig Stevenson. He snapped a picture of Major Applewhite smiling at media days, and I promised him you would deliver a prize. I don't know what that prize is, but it's up to you to deliver the prize at no pressure for that. But we've both seen Major loosen up, especially from year one to year two. He's going from, Texas to Houston and Alabama in there, and everybody thinks it's a gotcha. And there's like 3 media members, and we just want to be able to tell, the fans what's going on. We're not caring about secret plans or anything along those lines, or we're trying to get you. And he definitely loosened up from year one to year two. Have you seen a continuation for that? Now there is pressure on him because, like you said, he's gone from just worrying about the offense to now encapsulating the whole team.
It's funny you mentioned that phrase, gotcha, because Coach actually used that a good bit in media day, saying, look, don't get wrapped up in all that. They might try and pull something here, pull something there, find some locker room material, and so don't get bought into all that. He's very aware that it's out there, but he definitely, he's had moments where, for instance, I had him record some promos for some ticket sales, and I joked with them. I was like, hey, Coach, I need you to say 3 sentences. Should be the easiest thing you do all day long. And he messed up the first take. And so had a good laugh about it. But then after that, he gave in true former quarterback fashion, gave a big old fist bump as he finished it off, did it correctly afterwards. And so seeing him in that regard has been fun because not only just in the day-to-day like practice and whatnot, he's also in the booth on game days the last 3 years. So we haven't really been able to watch him on the field the last couple of years and see how he reacts to things. We might feel it in the countertop sometimes when he's
right. We've been in the press box feeling his presence before when things have gone right or when they have gone wrong. Let's take a time out. We'll come back. We'll talk to JT Crabtree about Gio Lopez and can he fill the shoes really in this new generation of South Alabama football. It is the first young quarterback they are breaking in after having a veteran the last 3 seasons. We'll do that right after I tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. We'll have the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We're starting a new feature here. It is Voices of the Sunbelt. Let's continue our conversation with the South Alabama Jaguars radio broadcaster JT Crabtree about breaking in a new young quarterback in Gio Lopez. We're talking to JT Crabtree, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Do you think there's new wrinkles? Obviously, there's new personnel. South Alabama has had a couple of veteran quarterbacks the last 3 seasons. From Jake Bentley to Carter Bradley have had, horses in the backfield as well. That's what Kane wanted to do. We'll see. Does Major Applewhite want to continuing to run the ball? And for the first time, really in this new regime era of South Alabama football, they're breaking in a young but talented quarterback.
Yeah, with Gio Lopez coming in, it's a different wrinkle, but I'm excited about what Gio brings to the table. We saw him in 5 games last year, and the 5th game was the bowl game, so he preserved his red shirt. And so to see what he can bring offensively, not only in the passing game, but also he's very mobile. The guy can pull it down and run. He can do some option stuff as well. And so to see what he brings in a different dynamic to the offense like that, we haven't been able to see. Jake Bentley and Carter Bradley were not mobile quarterbacks by any means. Both of them ended up with knee injuries over their careers. And so it's really interesting to see what we're going to add with Gio moving forward. We saw it a little bit at times with Desmond Trotter when he'd come in there in some emergency roles and whatnot, but we haven't seen a full-fledged motion option offense potentially, or read option offense, anything like that. And I think we'll see that this year. I think we'll see some big dynamics with not only Gio Lopez, but Braylon McReynolds at running back and Kentrell Bullock. Those will probably be the two main guys in the backfield with them. And I think we'll see a very different looking offense where it's a little more fluid, it's a little more athletic, and I think we're going to use some space a little bit more this year as well. And so that's really exciting, because in the history of our program, we've really only had maybe one mobile quarterback in our true mobile quarterback in our program's history, and that was Ross Matheny. And he wasn't really a running quarterback. He was just a pocket passer who could run if he needed to. Right. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what Gio brings to the table. We've got Bishop Davenport behind him as well that's got some good legs too. And so having multiple guys that can do some different things offensively for us with Gio, I'm really excited to see what that offense looks like with Major fully running the show now.
All right, so I want to talk to you about this because I didn't think it was a thing. We're talking with JT Crabtree from South Alabama, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day, radio broadcaster of the Jaguars. I didn't think it was a thing, but apparently it is a thing. I asked Rocky Boyman, who covered the Sunbelt Media Days, is being a left-handed quarterback a thing? Meaning, you're the strong side and the weak side are different, so left tackle, right tackle. But does that flip the rest of the offense? So if you are going from left-handed quarterback to right-handed quarterback, how does that change things? Has Coach Applewhite, has Major has said anything about dealing? I don't want to say dealing with it. It sounds like it's a burden, but having a left-handed quarterback is different. Just the way the ball comes out, the way the ball sails, the way the ball tails. It is different the way that these receivers are used to it.
It definitely is. It's something that the guys have to get used to, because you hardly ever see a left-handed quarterback consistently. And so you might see a guy here or there throwing around the backyard that's lefty, but you don't see a ton of them on game day. Right. And so for a lot of these guys on this team, they have not received a pass from a left-handed quarterback where a ball's spinning the opposite direction. Gio throws it a little bit differently. He doesn't use the laces. He flips it around and uses the opposite side of the football. And that's just the way he likes to throw. He doesn't like the laces. He doesn't like the feel of it. So he flips it around, and so that's a little bit different as well. But we actually talked with our tight end, DJ Thomas-Jones, about that earlier today, and he said the biggest adjustment for him was not necessarily the spin, but seeing where to expect the ball coming from. You look at a play, and you're expecting the ball to be coming from the right shoulder across the body, and now he's having to flip that view and say, okay, if we're coming from this direction, I have to look to the other side of his body to see where that football is coming from. And that was interesting to hear from a tight end's perspective. And of course, he's going to be catching passes as well, but just to hear that someone has to not necessarily anticipate that spin and whatnot. And he said he has to flip his hands sometimes. He'll go straight palms, then other times he has to roll it over and do some different things with it. There's a lot of nuance that goes into the different spin of a football receiving it that you don't necessarily think about. And so it was interesting to think about, say you got a lefty quarterback and you're a tight end coming from left across the right, that ball is going to be coming around differently. It's going to be coming around the left tackle instead of maybe near around the center. And so that's a big shift that you've got to make with your eyes, be able to anticipate that throw.
And can you set that up with the machine where they practice catching, where they're just trying to get, their hands ready? Can they set that up as it coming from a left-handed quarterback?
I don't know. I would think they could, but that's a great question. I don't know if a machine can flip it around like that or not.
Talking to JT Crabtree, voice of the South Alabama Jaguars. All right, what about, we talk about Gio Lopez. Who's in the backfield? Because, again, LaDainian Webb, handled the duties for, most of the last couple of years, 1,000-yard rusher both years, tons of touchdowns as well. Who is getting the first shot at leading the charge of the Jaguars rushing game?
Yeah, LaDainian's been great the last couple of years, and so we're going to probably see now this year with his departure, Braylon McReynolds, who fully healthy from his broken collarbone last year, and Kentrell Bullock be the two main guys. Kentrell was there last year as well. We're going to get year 3 out of Braylon, and he looks the part. When he came in as a true freshman from Mobile, he's the hometown kid. he was undersized. He was legitimately the fourth running back on the depth chart, and he found special packages to get in there and get a screen pass or a swing or something out of the backfield or contribute on special teams on kick returns. Well, now you're going to see him as probably the featured back, and he looks the part. He's put on about 15 pounds. He looks bulkier. He still has his speed and his twitchiness, which is what got him into games. And so I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see what Braylon can add. And Kentrell, another year just in the playbook, too. You know, we saw spurts of him last year. He's got some really, really good straight line speed. It was just a matter of getting him in that space. And I think having another year under his belt, he's going to be able to find those holes a little better, a little quicker, utilize that speed, because that's what made him so dangerous on kick returns sometimes was if he gets a full head of steam and he's coming downhill, you better get out of the way. And so I think those two guys will be the main you see in the backfield carrying the football for us.
All right, so I was going to say that sounded more like, in this case, lightning and thunder, but you're telling me that Edwards has a little, McReynolds has a little bit of the thunder in him.
He does. He's packed on some muscle now. Now, we haven't gotten in full pads yet. That's coming up on Monday, but I expect that we're going to hear some pretty good pops from him too.
All right, and then one of the guys coming back on the outside, he got hurt early on. Maybe that was one of the reasons that the offense wasn't quite as consistent, but Devin Voisin has returned to the Jaguars.
He has, and he's huge. You look at last year and you see the big numbers that Colin Lacey put up, and obviously he had a great season, and now he's at Louisville. And then Jamal Pritchett behind him, who was just supposed to be the slot guy and just catch a pass here or there for us. He turned out to be one of the number one targets for us outside of Colin. And then you lose Devin, and you think of what could have been with that trio of wideouts if Devin had been able to stay healthy. But he's back. He's healthy. He runs around with the brace, and he said he's been cutting on it for months, and it feels fine. It's just the mental part of it it's not going to tear again. I'm going to get out there, and it's fine. I think he's really an underrated part of this offense moving forward, Dave, is that he's going to get his looks. He knows this offense. He's the veteran guy in that core. And yes, Jamal Pritchett did great things last year, and I anticipate him to do the same again this year. But Devin's going to be a huge, huge part of the offense this season, where you lose a guy like Colin Lacey, who accumulated so many tackles and so many targets and just so many eyeballs on him. I think Devin's going to draw a little bit of that same attention once he gets going this year.
Well, a couple of years ago, right, Jalen Wayne was the number one guy, deep threat, very exciting. But it was Devin Voisin and Colin Lacey who were each in the top 5 in receiving catches in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there with Jalen Wayne. He was the go-to guy, and right. Devin still led us in receptions and receiving yards that season. He was the guy, really, maybe not in name and maybe explosiveness and physical ability, but he was the primary target for Carter Bradley in that 22 season when we won 10 ball games. And so I think we'll see something close to that. I don't know if we'll see the full thing because we have a guy like Jamal Pritchett on the other side as well. But I think we will see a closer version of Devin Voisin. And we saw him in the tiny spurts last year. He played well. I think we're going to see another version of 22 this year.
3, 2, 1. All right, let's take one last time out. When we come back, we'll wrap up our conversation with JT Crabtree, voice of the South Alabama Jaguars. We'll talk about all those holes they have to fill on defense and that daunting schedule. It's a little bit light early and gets really tough right after those first 3 ball games. We'll do that right after I tell you about FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have winded down, we get fewer and fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with the voice of the South Alabama Jaguars, JT Crabtree, about all those holes they have to fill on defense and the expectations, playing the expectation game when we're turning things over in Mobile, and that daunting schedule. They play in a row at App, at LSU, at Arkansas State. Stay hot, South Alabama. we wrap things up. JT Crabtree is on Locked On Sunbelt. JT Crabtree, voice of the South Alabama Jaguars, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We're going to try and get all of the radio broadcasters as camp is underway. All right, so we had a hole to fill at head coach. We had a hole to fill at quarterback. We had holes to fill at running back in the backfield and the wide receivers. A lot more holes to fill on the defense. I'm presuming we're not going to have it too deep until maybe Friday before opening day.
I hope for my sake I have one a little bit earlier, but you're probably right. You look up and down at the roster, what we had last year on defense, and Quentin Wilfon was great as an edge rusher, and Trey Kaiser held down the middle, and Khalil Jacobs and James Miller were also rotating in there and playing some really good football. And then, of course, Yam Banks, who was an All-American 2 years ago, is our nickelback safety. He's gone to Ole Miss. Cuddy Robinson on the outside. He's now at Arkansas. We lost a lot of guys on the defensive side of the football and a lot of key contributors. If you take away Jaden Voisin, who returns at safety and the twin brother of Devin Voisin, if you take away Jaden Voisin, we lost our top 6 tacklers from last season. It goes Jaden Voisin at 70-something tackles down to Wykevius Thomas in the 30s. And so it's a huge, huge gap of production on the defensive side of the football that we've got to figure out. Now, we did a pretty good job, I think, of going in the portal, getting some JUCO guys, getting some D1 transfers. I think Akil Washington, a transfer from Liberty who was here in the spring, I think he's going to have a really big season as the guy who's going to fill the role of Quentin Wilfon. He was at Liberty and actually played under Corey Batoon when he was up there before. He came down here to play for Batoon before he left for Missouri, and so he knows the system very well, and I think he's going to have a big season for us. One of the younger guys, Fairhope kid Blaine Myrick at linebacker, he saw limited action last year, but they're trying to preserve his red shirt. And when he was out there, he looked darn good. And I think he's going to have a big season. Of course, you can't not talk about the 2 stars on defense for us, Jaden Voisin up top at safety, who led us in tackles last season, and Wykevius Thomas, the all-conference defensive tackle, who's now going into his 6th season with us. Those are really going to be our anchors defensively. But there are a couple of different guys up there that you don't know. Who's going to replace James Miller and Khalil Jacobs and Trey Kaiser as your 3 rotating linebackers. Right now, it's probably Blaine Myrick and Gavin Forshey, and maybe Dalton Hughes mixes in there a little bit. Well, outside of those 3, we don't really know who it is right now. Mike Harris is back at safety, but you've got some other holes behind it. Ricky Hyatt's going to play, and Wesley Miller's going to play, but there's not a ton behind those guys. Ricky Fletcher's still back at cornerback, and I think he's poised to have a good season like Cuddy did last year. But then you look at the other cornerback spot, and it's Reggie Neely, who played a little bit last year, and some guys like Brian Dillard are returning as well, but didn't play a ton. And so you mix in some new guys like Ladarius Webb, who's a transfer from Oklahoma State, who's actually the cousin of LaDamian Webb, our former running back. You've got a couple of guys, Trent Singleton, who's a transfer from Mississippi State at safety, who can mix into that Husky role as well. And then Courtney McBride, who's a transfer from FAU, who's going to play one of the edge spots as well on the defensive line. He played a lot in his 3 years at FAU. And so there's some names and there's some spots where you think, okay, we can plug here. We're good right there. It's just a matter of how much depth do we have, especially up front. The way we play on defense, the way we rotate guys in, we play about 10 defensive linemen every game. And so, yes, you've got Bubba up there, Wykevius Thomas. You've got Maurice Strong Jr. back for a 7th season, but he's been banged up in his career. Ed Smith returns. He didn't play at all last season. Carlos Johnson is back, and he's a kind of an undersized defensive tackle, but he plays well. Lamondre Brooks is back, but he's been hurt as well. And so there's, again, a lot of names, but a lot of question marks too.
All right, so you mentioned the system. Are we playing the same defensive system that Corey Batoon had? Are we still in, which was Kane Wommack's system, which was basically Kane Wommack's dad's system? So is this wasn't it a 4-2-5?
So it was 4-2-5, and you might remember a little bit through last season, the 4-2-5 we had some troubles, and so we switched to actually a 3-3-5 for a large portion of last season. It looks like we're going to go back to the 4-2-5. A lot of what Major Applewhite wanted with selecting his coaching staff was bringing Will Wyndham back, that the terminology stays pretty similar to what it's been over the last couple of years with Corey Batoon. And so I think with that, I think you're going to see some more similarities to the way we looked defensively 2 years ago as the true 4-2-5 defense versus last year when we saw a lot of 3-3-5.
All right. Do we have odds on if Will Wyndham will be captured on TV as Coach Kane Wck? Not once, but twice.
It was frequent. That's a great question. I'd forgotten all about that. I hope not. I hope they realize that Coach is up in 4 hours north in Tuscaloosa now, and that's not him down on the field.
It happened at the UC. I mean, if you Google Kane Wck, Will Wyndham comes up in images. He did it. It was at the UCLA game and the JMU game, which was a disaster from the get-go. The bus being late, Wommack being misidentified.
Was late. The flight was late the night before. The whole trip was just awful.
Just a disaster. All right, so let's wrap it up with the schedule because it is a little bit daunting. Talking to JT Crabtree, voice of the South Alabama Jaguars, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Dave Schultz with you. All right, so it starts off with what would appear to be 3 winnable games to begin the season. You start off with North Texas at home. You go to Ohio to take on the Bobcats, and then you get Northwestern State at home. And then the level of competition steps up. You got a Thursday night game at App State. You got a Saturday afternoon game against LSU in Baton Rouge, and then you're on the road at Arkansas State and Jonesboro. Very easily could start out 3-3 and then look up and find, or 3-0 and then look up and find yourself 3-3. I think there's more pressure on those first 3 games because I'm not sure how many people are expecting any of those victories in the next 3 games, except the guys lining up in the red, white, and blue.
Yeah, no doubt. It's daunting. And you look at what we've done the last couple of years, and especially Major Applewhite said this himself. You look at the 2022 season when we went 10-3. Yeah, the 10 wins was great, but our opponent's strength of schedule and our opponent's records wasn't great. And so you look at what we've got now with North Texas, who it's an interesting matchup because they could score the mess out of the football last year. They just couldn't stop anybody. And so that might end up being a shootout. Ohio has been good the last couple of years. They defeated Georgia Southern in a bowl game to end their season last year. And I know they've got a lot of holes to fill. They've got several key spots that they've got to fill from graduation. But Athens, Ohio is a weirdly tough place to play. Who would have known that Athens, Ohio is one of the best party schools in the country? But apparently it is. And so I guess we'll find out when we go up there in week 2. And then Northwestern State on a Thursday, FCS versus FBS should win that one. And then that game being on a Thursday is so that we've got a full week to get ready for the Thursday matchup at Appalachian State. I mean, the first 3, okay, some question marks. You got to kind of feel out your team and whatnot. Those next 3, though, that's going to be really, really tough. And that's, I think, what's going to tell us more than anything about what this team's made of. If you go 3-0 through those first games, great. How do you respond to the next 3? Or if you go 2-1, 1-2, how do you respond? And App State's not an easy place to play. It's a nationally televised game on ESPN. It's the conference opener for both teams. The Rock is going to be rocking. It's going to be loud, and it's going to be really shaking when we go up there to Boone. And, of course, LSU, it is what it is. You go into Death Valley at night at 6:45 on the SEC Network. That's going to be tough in itself. But that's going to be a cool matchup because Major Applewhite, born and raised in Baton Rouge, and so he's going back home. So that'll be really cool to see.
And yet, was not an LSU fan.
He was not.
Grew up an Alabama fan, oddly enough.
Alabama fan, and went to Texas, obviously, and had a great playing career.
Right.
But then after that, you mentioned Arkansas State. Jonesboro is tough to play, and Arkansas State's going to be very good this year. Jalen Rayner in year 2 is going to be, I think, really a monster in this league. And so that's going to be a game to circle as well.
So we hear what we want to hear. All right. I'm sure as broadcasters, you do that well. All I heard was we're taking the over with North Texas. That's what I heard. All right. That's what I heard. JT Crabtree, tell us. All right. So what are the expectations in South Alabama, in Mobile, for the South Alabama team? I mean, there's, reasons and excuses. There is a turnover, right? The head coach moved on. A bunch of players moved on. Breaking in a young quarterback. And Jalen Rayner had an outstanding year last year, a little inconsistent. But, boy, if you get 17 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions and about 2,500 yards in about 9+ games, maybe 10+ games that he had, that's be very good for Gio Lopez. What are the expectations for the Jaguars in Mobile?
Yeah, there's like we've been talking about, there's a lot of question marks, but there's a good bit of excitement. I think there's a good possibility that you can look last year. We went 7-6. I think you've got a great chance to even surpass that potentially, even in spite of the tough start of the schedule. There's a lot of talent on this team. There's just a lot of young talent. There's a lot of unknown talent with this team. There's still guys, we go to practice these last 2 days and we're looking at positions and it's like, I don't know who this guy is. I haven't heard of this guy. Right. And we're still trying to figure these guys out. And I think the coaching staff is a little bit as well of just who's going to be, that third string guy that's going to step up and rotate with the ones. Who's going to be that backup right guard that gives us a shot in the arm when someone rolls an ankle or something like that. There's a lot of question marks, but I think folks here in Mobile are excited about the prospect of Major Applewhite being our head coach. They'd be excited if he was our quarterback too. But if they're excited about him being our head coach. He's a name. People know who Major Applewhite is. People always talk about, oh man, that Holiday Bowl, that 2001 Holiday Bowl, that was tremendous, and that's our guy. And it speaks volumes in this area when you've got a former Texas starting quarterback, you've got a former Texas OC. He was the OC at Alabama for a year. He was a former head coach at Houston. He's done this before. And I think that's what gives everyone a little bit of comfort is that, we knew Kane Wck, obviously, when he was the DC, and we knew that he was going to eventually become a head coach and do good things. But there's some things when you haven't been a head coach that kind of sneak up on you sometimes. That's not going to happen with Major. He's been there. He's done it before. He's not going to be surprised when something crazy happens or if he has to make a weird last-minute decision on something. Chances are he's already done that before. And so I think that's what kind of gives Jag fans here a little bit of comfort is knowing that, yes, you lost your head coach. You lost him to the Crimson Tide. You lost him kind of late in the season or late in the hiring season, if you will. You kind of lost him a little bit late there. But you got a guy who was already in the building, who's done a lot of good things in his football career, and I don't think you'll really skip a beat. And that's really, really exciting when, again, you look at the talent we've got and you can kind of look to the future and see what these guys could potentially be. You're pretty excited about what they can do now, too.
He's JT Crabtree, voice of the South Alabama Jaguars, joining us on Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. The first of hopefully all the voices of the Sunbelt football teams hopping on Lockdown Sunbelt. Really appreciate your time, JT. Have a great season. We'll try to catch up to you once they start playing football.
Appreciate you, Schultz. Hopefully I pumped enough sunshine to Jag fans there for you.
Absolutely. Well done.